the state of Kansas and 27 other states had matched their voter files, and they found supposedly 6.9 million people, actually 3.5 million people, voting twice. Now, voting twice is a go-to-jail crime. You get 5 years in the federal penitentiary. And here were 3.5 million people supposedly committing this extraordinarily difficult voting in 2 states in the same election. They had their names, they had their addresses. So I said, I need the list. And I went through 6 months of hell because all these states, like North Carolina, said, well, these are criminals. We can't give you the list because they're suspects. I said, you've got 3 million suspects? So finally, I got 3 states relented after 6 months. And I got 2 million names, supposedly 1 million double voters. And this is a very, very typical list. For example, Robert Stephen Jackson Jr., or Robert Stephen Jackson, is supposed to be the same person as Robert Herman Jackson Jr. And one voting in Virginia, one voting in Georgia. Now, you have to understand, that's not unusual. If you look at my whole list, in fact, I think it was up on the screen there, there isn't a single name where the middle name matches on that list. In fact, we went through the entire 2 million names. 1 out of 4 names has a mismatch of just the middle name. Junior, senior, you know, junior, senior used to be father, son. Well, they say, no, it's the same voter, just, you know, taking a different shape and a different age. They claimed that that they used birth dates to match. There were no birth dates, none. They claimed that there was a Social Security match. This is Chris Kobach, the Secretary of State of Kansas. He's kind of the Catherine Harris of 2014. He's always finding illegal voters. But there are no Social Security matches, and they said if there's a mismatch of Social Security number, that's basically everyone on the list. It actually says in the instructions, which we found, that that they ignore the mismatch. They ignore the middle name mismatches, Social Security number mismatches, birth date mismatches. 500,000 people in Georgia alone are supposedly actual double voters, not double registered, double voters.
Last week, Democracy Now! Called the Kansas Secretary of State's office for details on which states participated in its voter registration data crosscheck program in 2014. Brad Bryant, the state election director, responded with a list and map. The states are Alaska, Arizona, Arkansas, Colorado, Georgia, Idaho, Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Kansas, Kentucky, Louisiana, Massachusetts, Michigan, Mississippi, Missouri, Nebraska, Nevada, North Carolina, Ohio, Oklahoma, Pennsylvania, South Carolina, South Dakota, Tennessee, Virginia, Washington, and West Virginia.
Well, one correction there. Washington dropped out. That's how I got the list. Washington said this list is junk. It's just a bunch of common names. The only match is first name and last name. So they handed me the list. They said, these aren't criminals. It's just a list of common American names. And, you know, as soon as you get to common names, Amy, you're getting to African Americans. That's a legacy of slavery. Most Jacksons in America, according to the U.S. Census, are African American. Most David Lees. We have a whole list. Oh, my God. We have pages and pages of Michael Lees. And most of those, about 64%, are Asian American, like Michael L. Lee is supposed to be the same voter. He's from Georgia. Is supposed to be the same voter as Michael Thomas Lee of Virginia.
So they get around fast from one state to another, the same person is
we have
voting.
People, some of their names, they have people matched as voting 9 times.
How do you challenge this? I mean, the polls, well, a lot of people have been doing early voting, as we see. But tomorrow, if someone goes to the polls.
Unfortunately, it's a very underhanded method of removing people. When years ago I found the purge of black voters as so-called felons in Florida by Catherine Harris. There they marked an F next to someone's name if they were so-called felon. By the way, of 58,000 names, none were. None. And that changed the election of 2000. In this case, they don't mark anyone as a duplicate voter. Instead, they send you a postcard that says, please verify your address and name. Now, most people, looks like junk mail, throw it away. Renters, poor people, students who are moving a lot, the letter doesn't even find them. So they know who they're knocking off. If the letter doesn't come back in a state like North Carolina, they're going to remove that voter. In some states, it's a two-step process. If they don't vote Tuesday, they're marked inactive. If they don't vote Tuesday, then they will lose their vote for the presidential election, and that's where you're going to see the biggest effect of this. Wow. It could determine the Senate on Tuesday, but it will absolutely have a huge impact on the federal presidential in 2016.
And what would happen if you lost your right to vote if you don't vote tomorrow?
You know what they do? They give you one of these provisional ballots. The problem of a provisional ballot, it's like a placebo ballot. It makes you feel good. You filled out a ballot. They say, oh, we'll check your registration. If you're not registered, you're not registered. And they throw it out. That's the problem with getting the provisional ballot.
You're headed after the show to North Carolina. It's one of the states. I mean, we're talking about the majority of states are in this Crosscheck program.
Majority, well, it's not just any states. Almost every state is a Republican-controlled state where the election board is Republican-controlled. So it's a very select group, about half the states, but it's the Republican states. And because they know who this is knocking off. They know who's losing their vote.